Hello and welcome to PA 402 Employment Law. In this video, I'm going to discuss employee versus independent contractor. We're going to use NotebookLM as a resource. So there's no video going on right now because I want to show you my full screen. You can see exactly what I'm working with. Okay, so in this video, my goal is to examine the distinction between an employee and an independent contractor. And what we're going to do is I've trained a NotebookLM on the Chapter 8 reading from the text, as well as Charles Muell's wonderful article that's been uploaded to the Bureau of Labor Statistics titled, "What is an Employee? The Answer Depends on Federal Law." And so when we look at the classification to an employee and independent contractor, this classification carries significant legal weight. And the answer to the question, well, oftentimes this depends in the law, it's going to depend on which federal statute is being applied at that time by the court. So, what is an employee? And the answer is it depends. The distinction of employee versus independent contractor will affect broad issues: tax obligations, wage protections, discrimination claims, etc. So why does it even matter that we are even describing what an employee is? So under federal law, employees are entitled to certain protections under the Fair Labor Standards Act, Title VII, many that we've already discussed. ADA, you can see a few listed here. So it's really important to understand that those protections extend to employees. Independent contractors, on the other hand, do not. They are not covered by as many of those protections. So when we talk about an employee versus independent contractor, the issue of misclassification comes up quite a bit. And so when there's misclassification of an employee who should have been an employee, but they're classified as an independent contractor, then the employers, the businesses themselves can stand, they may face substantial liability, back taxes, unpaid benefits, etc. So I have a picture here that I use NotebookLM to create this, and we'll talk about that in just a bit. Really good. I encourage you to pause the video right here and you can look at and just see. There could be some issues. I didn't see any issues with this. It could have gone in greater detail, particularly with regards to the other two tests, not just the economic realities test. But this is really good support and resource for you. So first thing you need to understand is anyone can say, an employer can say, ah, you're an independent contractor. There's the label I give you. Courts do not rely on that label. It's notoriously wrong. And so they're just like, we don't care. Like, we're going to do an evaluation using the totality of the circumstances. And with that totality of circumstances, they're looking for a central question. Who has the right to control the work process? And that is the concern when we talk about the distinction between an employee and an independent contractor. So again, who has the right to control the work process? There are three tests that the courts will use, and each test can apply a different federal statute, but you can see here common law, economic realities, and hybrid tests. Under the common law test, the focus by the court is supervision, skill level, method of payment. You can read all the rest there. So this test is often used in tax contexts and in statutes that lack a clear statutory definition of employee. When we go to the economic realities test, this is most commonly applied in Fair Labor Standards Act cases. And so the tests ask the question, is the worker economically dependent on the business or the employer for continued employment? And so again, the shift in the economic realities test shifts from the formal control to economic dependency. So then we have the hybrid test, and this is oftentimes used in Title VII cases. And the hybrid, as you can probably figure out in the name, it combines both approaches, the economic realities and common law test, but still emphasizes the employer's right to control the work process. So it's critical to understand that. So what I want to do is I want to demonstrate how NotebookLM can be so useful in determining or learning, not just determining employee versus independent contractor, but also learning, like having it as like a teacher's assistant to help you understand the material. So I want to show you my screen, which will be a Notebook LM that I've trained. And you can see I've trained it on two things on the left-hand side, chapter 8, that's chapter reading, and also this excellent article. On the right-hand side, you'll see there's a studio and there's a lot of resources. I don't want to look at all the resources here, but just understand they're there. You can see that what has happened here is I've created an excellent resource. That's the picture I showed you before. Nice little infographic. And finally, there's flashcards that you get 70 cards here. What doctrinal is either party to terminate an employment relationship at any time with or without cause. That'd be an at-will employment. Let's see if I got it right. Yeah, employment at will. So I got it right. Boom. And I go on to the next one. This is a great way to test your knowledge and skill. Other great resources, I encourage you to go there. I'm going to make this big so you can see everything. So one of the first things I encourage you to do is there's this little button here that says, hey, how do you want to configure this? Do you want just by default, conversations, goal styles? I encourage you to learning guide. This is going to be more academic to learn, to grasp new concepts. Save it. It's immediately going to say, hey, this is what I want to do. It's going to give you a couple of quick sentences, which is fine. Now, what I want to do is I've already had this copied and paste or copied, and I'm going to just paste it in here. So I'm going to ask the hypothetical. Notice the usefulness of NotebookLM. It's going to hopefully, it'll walk me through and help me identify, hey, this is a scenario. And again, marketing consultant, size and agreement, the state she's an independent contractor. She works exclusively for one company, kind of all runs in for 3 years. The company sets her schedule, requires attendance at weekly meetings. Hopefully now you're thinking, oh, wait a minute. Like there's control. Like what are we talking about here? Are we talking about the common law test, etc.? The company sets her schedule, requires attendance at weekly meetings, provides office space and equipment, supervises her performance. She's paid in a monthly salary. Now, what you're telling is I want you to, this is to NotebookLM, identify the applicable tests under each statute, apply relevant factors, analyze classification outcome, cite supporting authority. So here we go. It's going through and it's giving me, this is NotebookLM, not just like, oh, I'm going to cheat for you. Here you go. Like, look, you have the right to control worker. Why? The company sets a consultant's schedule, supervisor performance, provides her new workspace and equipment that should be classified as an employee. Each one of these will give you this an exact location in the source where it found this. And you can see the article name down here. It comes from what is the employee, the mule article. Number two, we'll go for the textbook. Well, I lied to you. Nope. Number two is just another section within that article. Then it says, hey, under the economic realities tests, applicable to, there we go, Federal Fair Labor Standards Act and FMLA, something I didn't mention. The focus on whether the worker is economically independent. That goes with what we talked about in this week's reading in the course. And finally, the hybrid test. Across all tests, the signed independent contract does not dictate her legal status. Courts and agencies prioritize. That's it. They're not going to be bound by a classification because they can be miscategorized all the time. And so we can see here, like, okay, quick, down, dirty. It gives me the resources I'm looking for. Oh, that's great. Working conditions comes from chapter 8. I can click on this and it'll actually open up on the side and go to the exact reading, page 181 of where it is. That's the very end of the chapter. Let me just minimize that again. And then, hey, I have other questions like what are the financial penalties that could, and there's proposed questions that NotebookLM gives you. Help me better understand the distinctions between the common law test and the economic realities test. And so now this is something you could ask me, you can ask online, and who knows what you're going to get online. But what's happening for NotebookLM, this is siloed. You're only going to get an answer that's based off of this material. And I encourage you, this is the type of question I've had students in the past ask. And you can always ask me, ask your instructor, but this is another resource to help you sort of tease out those answers. There you go. The primary difference between the two lies in what they aim to measure and the specific laws they enforce. That's kind of what I briefly touched on at the beginning. Common law test, focus on whether play has a right to control. Yep, that's exactly what we discussed previously in the reading and during the seminar. Work process and the final product, typically used in IRS, Fair Labor Relations on the National Labor Relations Act. Okay, so we're talking about control. Economic realities test, whether the worker is economically dependent on the employer for continued employment, designed for the worker protection laws like the Fair Labor Standards Act, FMLA, broad scope, more likely classify workers as an employee than common law test. Okay, like sort of repeating what I'm having here, but it's giving me sources. I can look it up. And I'm hoping that you find this resource helpful because if you're not using AI, you might as well have a, a Ferrari in your garage and you never take it out to drive it. Like there's some really great abilities that you can use or tools that you can use in AI. Others, you got to be a little careful. One of the best things about Notebook LM, it's sort of like AI with a lot of training wheels still on it. You can be confident it's not going to bring in outside information that's going to lead you astray and get those hallucinations that AI is so common to bring. I'm not saying it's going to be 100% perfect all the time, but you can have greater confidence, which is why I encourage you to use Notebook LM whenever possible to create your own. If you have any questions how to do that, please contact me, contact your instructor. But all of you through the university have access to Notebook LM. Thank you and look forward to seeing you in class.